I am forever a believer that the act of making something is the most sacred, beautiful act that you can do as a person. So I'm currently standing in front of something that for some reason I've always wanted to see. This is Salvation Mountain. It's this kind of monument thing that was made by this guy named Leonard Knight. And the story of Leonard Knight, I feel like, is one that I have this deep relation with. I don't really know exactly how it came to be a part of my life the way it has, but essentially I saw a picture of this place a couple years ago and just had this feeling like I have to check this out. It was almost like a call from God to come out to Salvation Mountain. I just learned the backstory of this place, and essentially this guy was living in a van in his sister's driveway, and he had this revelation. He said he heard a voice from God that said that he was loved and that he had to spread this message. And so him, as sort of a creative person, decided he was going to come up with some sort of way of spreading this message. And to do that, he had the idea to make a hot air balloon, which was a certainly natural jump to make. That's exactly where my mind would have gone. He looks into the prices of hot air balloons and finds out that they're a little bit too expensive to buy. And so with that in mind, he just decides he's going to do it himself. He's going to build a hot air balloon by himself. And so over the course of 14 years, he's sewing, he's stitching, he's getting materials, and it's taken him forever. And he keeps, the further he gets into it, the more it disintegrates as he goes. And so it takes an incredibly long time. It's like this uphill battle, but he's got this dream, he's got this vision of how it's going to be when he finishes it. And he wraps it up, or at least to a point that's good enough to call done. And a voyage that he chose to take it on started around here, which is the ground zero for Salvation Mountain. And he gets all these people on board for the big old voyage, I guess. And everyone's gathered around. There's a ton of people helping, and the balloon doesn't take off, even though he'd been working on it for 14 years. But he ends up sticking around, and he ends up making this, I guess is the short, fast way to say it. He made a bunch of friends and found this sort of ex-military base that's known as Slab City. And instead of making this hot air balloon, he decides to erect this monument to God. And the relation I have found in my recent story has been an interesting one. I just recently looked back on all the videos that I've made. And the first time I ever uploaded a video to the internet was 14 years ago, which is the same amount of time it took my guy to make this hot air balloon that never took off. And up until this point, it's felt very similar to that story. It's been years and years and years of making what I consider to be artwork that nobody watched for, I would say, probably about 12 of those 14 years. I averaged under 1,000 views on everything I made, and for the majority, it was under 100. And yet still, for some reason, year after year, with this vision in my head, I kept making things, I kept uploading things. And recently, there's been a little bit of an uptick in the consumption of my artwork. But that is less what this video is about so much as it is, if that 14 years turned out to be that the balloon never lifted off the ground, I would have kept working on it. I would have pivoted and maybe done something else, maybe something a little bit different. But I would have kept working on something. And the reason being because it has never and will never be because I need it to take off. I don't need the eyes on it. I don't need the validation from people looking at it. At the end of the day, what I've come to learn about myself, I suppose, is that I am addicted and I am somewhat reliant on creating things. And I don't think I'm alone in that. I don't think that makes me super unique or super special. In fact, a huge majority of my friends and the people I'm really close with are the same way. they feel this need to just make something, and maybe all it is just to scream into the void that says, you know, I'm here. And a lot of times when you're screaming into the void like that, it feels like it's not worth the time because no one's hearing you. And I guess the feeling that I get from this place, and I think the reason I wanted to come all the way out here to experience it is because here's someone that screamed into the void for, 14 years on with his hot air balloon, and then this alone took him 30 years, just over and over and over, just working, screaming, creating, with no real expectation of anything other than hopefully completing something at some point, and that being enough. The idea that you're on this planet for a short period of time, you get this beautiful little opportunity to leave something behind, and whether or not 1 million people think that's worth the time, or whether 100 people think that's worth the time, or whether it be only, a couple, I suppose all I wanted to say while I was out here is, to whatever it is you're working on, to whatever it is your dream is, to whatever it is you wish to create someday, no matter who watches it or views it or listens to it, it's worth the time. Because at the end of the day, I am forever a believer that the act of making something is the most sacred, beautiful act that you can do as a person. I'm also the believer that I am the creation of something bigger than me, and I believe that that makes me valuable, and I think the same about any sort of artwork you have going on in your own little world. If you're a painter, if you're a musician, if you're a filmmaker, fill in the blank with whatever, or maybe you're none of those things. I suppose maybe the thesis at the end of all of this is just that it's worth the time. All of this, it's worth the time. And I don't think people tell other people that enough. It's a good thing you're here. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad I'm here. And I just think stuff like this is a testament to that. So with that, thank you for the new people who have followed along on the artwork I've created. The truth is I'd be here whether or not you were, but I'm grateful you are nonetheless. So thanks.